Welcome to this YSL Report Builder tutorial. In this video we'll explain how to calculate alternating row colours in grouped tables. We'll start with a quick reminder of how to calculate alternating row colours for detail rows in a table using the RowNumber function. Then we'll explain why that technique doesn't work for grouped tables and show you the solution using a combination of the RunningValue and CountDistinct functions. The final part of the video shows you how to combine detail rows and grouped rows into a single table, calculating different alternating row colours for each group. So let's get started. Here's a quick example of the type of thing we'll create in this video. We'll start with a reminder of how the basic technique works to create alternating row colours for tables with detail rows. So this table shows a list of films and how many Oscars each film has won, with alternating row colours between each detail row. We'll then explain why the same technique doesn't work in quite the same way for tables which are grouped. So here we've got our films grouped by which genre they belong to, showing the total Oscar wins, but we'll need to use a slightly different technique to get these alternating row colours. We'll then combine the two techniques so you can show alternating row colours for both detail rows and for grouped rows in the same table. And we'll take that to some sort of hideous conclusion where we can create a completely separate colour scheme for the detail rows and grouped rows in a table which contains both grouped and detail rows. If you'd like to follow along with this, you'll need a copy of the YSL Movies database. If you don't already have that set up, you can use this video to help you get it installed, and there's a link in that video's description which you can use to download the files. Assuming you have done that part, I'm going to head back over to Report Builder, where I've got an empty report waiting for me, and I'll start by creating a data source to connect to the YSL Movies database. So I'll right click on Data Sources and choose Add Data Source. I'll call this one Movies. I'll use a connection embedded in the report, and I'll use a Microsoft SQL Server connection. I'll click the build button here to help construct my connection string. My server name, I'm going to type in a shortcut to my local host, // then the name of the instance of SQL Server I'm using, SQL 2017. Once I've done that, I can click the drop-down list towards the bottom of the dialog box, choose my movies database, click OK a couple of times, and there's my movies data source created. Next, I can create my data set, and I'll do that by right-clicking on the movies data source and choosing Add Dataset. I'll call this one Films, and then use the Query Designer button at the bottom to get a bit of help building up my select statement. From the Tables folder, I'll expand the Film table first, and I'll select just the title and the Oscar wins columns from there. And then I'd like to have both columns from the genre table, so I'm just going to tick the box next to the genre table name, and that'll give me both genre ID and genre. I'll add a filter to the dataset as well to make sure I only see films with at least one Oscar win. So I'll click the Add Filter button, change the field name to Oscar Wins, the operator to is more than or equal to, and then type in a value of 1. I can then click OK to get my select statement generated, and then click OK again to create my dataset. Next, I'll create a basic table to display the results of the dataset. I'll get rid of this title placeholder text box first of all, and then I'll right click and remove my page footer as well. Then I can right click into the body of the report and choose Insert Table. I'll add in the title field and the Oscar wins field. And then just to make sure that when I run the report I'll actually see all the text. You may be familiar with this bug by now where sometimes when you run a report it doesn't actually show you all of the text in the table, so I'm missing my titles and some random film names there. So back into the design view I can simply highlight all the cells in the table and then change the default font to any other font, and then if I wanted to, back to the default font, and then that will sort out the display of all the text. A quick little extra bit of tidying up there as well. I'll change the column width of the title column to try to make everything readable on a single line. And then I'll format the column headers for the top row there as well. So a different background colour and bold the font. So there we go, there's the basic table created. To create alternating row colours for a table like this, which contains detail rows, we can use the RowNumber function. Just in case you hadn't seen the earlier video in this playlist which explains how to do this, a quick reminder of how the RowNumber function works, just so that we can understand the logic here. So back to the design view, I'm going to select the details row in the table, so that's the row with the 3 horizontal bars on it, and then in the last column in that empty cell I'm going to right click and launch the expression builder. If I then head to the Common Functions category, followed by the Miscellaneous section, I can double-click to insert the row number function. I then need to state the scope over which I want to calculate the row number. The simplest thing to do here is just enter the value nothing to use the outermost scope for row number. So that will essentially calculate a different number for each row, for each detail row. If I click OK at that point and then run the report, we'll see we get apparently the literal row number for each detail row in the table. What I wanted to do then was convert that into alternating values. And a simple way to do that is to divide the row number by 2 and work out what remains. If we divide an even number by 2, we'll get a remainder of 0. Divide an odd number by 2, we'll get a remainder of 1. So to do that, back in the design view, I can right-click on that same cell, choose expression, and then I can use the mod operator to divide the row number by 2 and return the remainder. If you're not sure, you can find the operators category and choose the arithmetic section. You'll find the mod operator sitting there, and it tells you, as it says in the description here, it divides 2 numbers and returns the remainder. So I can double-click the mod function or the mod operator and say 2. So the entire expression looks like so. And then if I click OK, I can run the report. And I'll see that odd numbered rows have a value of 1 and even numbered rows have a value of 0. So now that I have these alternating values between the different rows, I can use that to create a conditional format. Back in the design view, I'm going to head to the View tab in the ribbon and tick the box next to Properties to see the Properties window on the right hand side. And then I'd like to highlight the entire details row in the table by selecting the Detail Row selector. Find the background colour property, click on the drop-down arrow and then choose expression. I'm going to use an if function to test if the value generated by that expression is equal to 0 or 1. So I'm going to take away what's in that dialog box already, head to the Common Functions category, find Program Flow and then double-click if. I can then go to the Miscellaneous category and double-click row number and type in nothing and then close the round brackets for the row number function. Then I'm going to divide this number by 2 and find the remainder, so I can say mod 2, and then I could check if the result of that is equal to 1 or equal to 0. You can actually avoid the equals 1 or equals 0 part if we say row number nothing mod 2 is the logical test of an if function. That is essentially the same as asking, is that equal to 1? So the numbers 1 and 0 can be treated as true and false in Visual Basic. So if you wanted to shorthand that expression, you could just say row number nothing mod 2, which is the same as asking if it's equal to 1. I'm actually going to write out the equals 0 part to make it a little bit more explicit, and then type in a comma and then choose what colour I want my even numbered rows to be. So to do that, I can head to the Constants category in the bottom left hand corner here and choose a colour for the even numbered rows. I'll go with a light grey colour, another comma, and then choose the colour for the odd numbered rows. So I'm going to choose no colour, which is written out as transparent. I can then close the round brackets. The entire expression looks like so. And then if I click OK and then run the report from the Home tab of the ribbon, I'll find my alternating row colours. So now let's see what happens if we attempt to use the same technique in a table which contains groups. Let's head back to the design view. I'm going to select this table and just move it down the page a little bit so that I've got a bit of space to insert a brand new table. So I'll right click and insert a table. In the first column of that table, I'm going to add the genre field. And then I just want to modify the font from the default of Arial to any other and then back to the default font. So currently we're still looking at detail rows here. So if I were to run this report, I'll see a separate row for each film in the dataset, just showing me the actual genre name. And I want to convert this into showing just one single row for Western movies, one single row for drama, etc. So back in the design view, I'm going to add a group to this table. So with that table selected, I'm going to use the Groups panel at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to right-click on Details 1 and choose Group Properties. I'm going to change the name of the group so that it's called Genre. and then I'm going to add a group expression to group on the genre ID. I could group on the genre name as I've just displayed the genre name in the cell. You may find better performance by grouping on a simple ID number, a simple numeric value, rather than a field that contains a long string of text, particularly when you have lots of rows in your dataset. So I'm going to choose to group on genre ID, and then I'm going to head over to the sorting page as well and add a sort to this group so that it sorts alphabetically by genre name. So having done that, I can click OK. You'll see the details symbol now has disappeared to be replaced with a little bracket symbol. And if I run the report again now, I'll see one row for each individual genre. Back into the design view, I'm just going to change that column width a little, and then in the column to the right of the genre, I'm going to display the sum of the Oscar wins. The simplest way to do that is to select the Oscar wins field, and because the table is grouped, it will automatically apply the sum function to that. I can then just do some basic formatting for the header row again, and then a quick run of the report, and there's my basic grouped table setup. So let's apply the same conditional format to this table as we used for the initial table with the detail rows. If I switch back to the design view, a quick way to cheat with this is to highlight any cell in the original table which contains that conditional format. And then from the properties window, you can find the background color property and select the entire expression in that property. I can then copy that to the clipboard with Ctrl and C. And then in my new table, I can click on that row selector to select the grouped row, find the background color property again, and then change no color. I can just remove that and paste in what I've just copied. So it's exactly the same expression. If you wanted to modify this to use different colors, you can just click on the drop down arrow then and choose expression, and then you can modify that. So just to demonstrate that it is the same expression we've just created. Now that will affect the row colours for sure, but not in quite the way you might expect. If I run the report at this stage, although some rows are different colours, it's definitely not done on an alternating basis. In order to understand why this is happening, we need to understand what the RowNumber function actually returns. RowNumber is a bit of a misleading name for this function because it isn't the physical row number of the table that the RowNumber function returns. Let's head back to the design view and we'll add the RowNumber function to this extra column in our table. I can right click into that empty cell, choose expression, head to common functions and select miscellaneous, and then double click to insert the RowNumber function. I'll enter the scope as nothing and then close the round brackets. And then just before I click OK, let's have a look at what the description of that function actually says. It says it returns a running count of all the rows in the specified scope. So we've entered a scope of nothing here, which means it will just use the standard default outermost scope. So that means the RowNumber function is actually counting all of the rows that belong to each group. And then it's accumulating those as it works down the table. So if I click OK and then run the report, it shows me on the first row the number 6, meaning there are 6 action films in the action genre. The next row says 26, so this is a running total, or a running count, remember, so that must mean there are 20 adventure films and 6 action films, so the total is 26. You can see then that any row where there is an even number has this grey background colour, and any row where there's an odd number uses the transparent background colour. So the basic logic of our conditional format is working, it's just that the row numbers we're returning aren't correct. Just to demonstrate that this really is the running count of the individual films, let's head back to the design view, and if I add an extra column to the table, I'm going to assign any field to that I like. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to add the genre field. Let's refer to the genre name, and then I'm going to click on the word genre, right click on it, and choose Summarize by Count. If I then run that report, you'll see that it really is returning, the RowNumber really is returning the running count of rows in each group. So there are 6 action films, 20 adventure films, 17 animation films, etc. So clearly RowNumber is not the function to use in order to create alternating row colours in a grouped table. So rather than returning the running count of individual detail rows, what I'd like to do is return a running count of the number of different genres we've encountered as we work down the table. So step one in doing that is to move away from using the standard count function to counting the number of unique or distinct values in a particular group. So in the action group, if we count the unique genre names or the unique genre IDs, then there will only be one unique genre in the action genre. It will be the action genre. So let's head back to the design view, and I'm going to change the count function here. So I'm going to click on the word count and then right click on it, choose summarize by, and then choose count distinct. If I run the report now, you'll see that every single row contains a value of 1, because in each genre there is only one unique genre. The next step is to create a running total count of the number of individual genres we've seen as we work down the table. To do that, I'm going to head back to the design view, and then let's insert a new column into the table to the right hand side. Then I can right click into that new empty cell and choose expression. We'll need a new function to do this. I'm going to head to the Common Functions category and then choose Aggregate, and then I'm going to insert the RunningValue function by double-clicking on its name. Now, you may have watched the previous video in the playlist which explains all about how the RunningValue function works, but basically it allows you to apply a running aggregate. It could be an average, a sum, a count, whatever, to a particular field or a particular expression over a specific scope. So what that means is we can apply a running count distinct for either the genre name or the genre ID. The first thing I need to do is reference the field that I want to use. So going back to the fields list, it doesn't matter really whether I use genre ID or genre for this particular example, but I'm going to use genre ID. So I can double click to insert the field name, then a comma, and then I need to write in the name of the function which I'd like to use to aggregate that field. So I can do that by heading back to the aggregate category and then double clicking count distinct. For the running value function, you just need to provide the name of the aggregate. So I want to take away the open round brackets that's been added there for me as well. And then another comma, and I need to specify the scope over which I want to calculate this count distinct. So here I'm going to enter the value of nothing again, and then close the round brackets, and that's the entire expression. So if I click OK to confirm that and then run the report, we'll end up with what is now effectively the row number for our grouped table. To calculate the alternating row colour now is really straightforward. We can just use the same logic as we used earlier, dividing the row number by 2 and returning the remainder, and then working out whether that's a 1 or a 0 to determine the actual colour of the row. So let's head back to the design view, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to right click on that cell into which we've created that expression, and then head to the expression builder. And then just to avoid writing out this calculation again, I'm just going to copy and paste everything except for the equals operator there. So I'll copy that to the clipboard with Control and C and then cancel from that dialog box. Then I'll highlight the entire details row, and I'm going to find the background color property. It seems to be tucked away there. There we go, background color. Click on the drop down arrow next to that and choose expression. So rather than calculating simply the row number of nothing, I'm going to take that part away. So I'm going to highlight that and delete it, and then press Ctrl and V to paste in what I've just copied. Just to tidy this up a little bit to make it a little more readable, I'm going to take each of these arguments down onto a separate line so that we can see the whole thing a little more clearly. So the entire expression should look like so, using our running value of the count distinct rather than the simple row number function. So if I click OK at that point, and then I'll tidy up a little more, in fact, by deleting these 3 columns. I'll highlight those and delete them. We don't really need them anymore. I can do the same thing actually with the other table. I can delete that extra column there quite happily. And then if I run the report, we'll now see alternating row colours in our grouped table. Next, let's have a look at what happens when you have a table which contains both detail rows and grouped rows. I'll head back to the design view, and I'll start by repositioning my tables. Actually, I'll move my initial table back up to the top and my grouped table a little further down the report. And then what I'm going to do is apply a group to the initial table. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to right click on the details row in the row groups panel, choose add group, parent group, and then I'm going to choose to group initially by the genre field. I'll add the group header as well. Grouping by the genre field makes sure that I get a column which displays the genre name, and will also apply an automatic sort by genre name, so I can click OK to create that section. And then I'd like to just modify the way the grouping works. I'm going to right click on the genre 1 group that's been created, choose group properties, and then change the group expression to group on the genre ID, just for that potential better performance when you group on a simple numeric field rather than a text field. So if I click OK at that point, if we then have a quick look at what happens when we run the report, we'll see we get the alternating row colours from the detail rows has been copied into the header row and the genre header, but that's still working, of course, based on the running count of detail rows. So the first two groups are coloured in grey. There's an even number of rows in total in the action and adventure groups, and then adventure switches to blank or transparent, etc., etc. So we're still relying on the RowNumber function to calculate the alternating group colours. Changing the alternating group colours isn't particularly difficult. It's essentially just using the exact same conditional format we've used in the grouped table. So back into the design view, I'm actually going to move my column headers down a row. So currently these column headers are sitting in the static row at the top of the table. I'd like to repeat those column headers in each genre group. So I'm going to copy and then paste those into the next row down, and then I can right click and delete the top row of the table entirely. What I'm then going to do is select any cell in my grouped table and just copy the formatting expression. So I'm going to highlight the entire thing in the background color property. I can do that either directly from the properties window, or to make it easier, I can go to the expression option and highlight and copy it from there instead. And then I can select all the cells in my other table. So I'll highlight these top two column headers, then hold down the control key and click on the genre group header as well. Find the background color property, and again I can either paste directly into that property, or I can go to the expression builder and paste the expression in here as well. Make sure you don't paste in two equals operators, so we only want one there at the beginning. I'm just going to modify the colours I'm using here as well, just to make them stand out a little more. I'm going to get rid of the light grey for the even numbered rows, and I'm going to replace that with like a dark orange colour, tomato. Oops, sorry, wrong button there. The tomato colour. And then for the transparent rows, I'm going to make those dark blue instead. So I'll take away transparent there and replace it with dark blue. Okay, so if I click OK at that point, and then you'll see the colouring of the rows in the design view changes, but if I run the report, you'll see that it generates two completely different colours for the alternating groups. It might also be useful then to modify the font colours in the alternating groups. So for the dark blue, the black font is quite difficult to read. We could make the font colour white and the font colour black for the alternating groups. So let's head back to the design view. Again, you can copy and paste the existing expression for the back colour. So I'm going to head to one of the existing cells which has one of these background colour expressions applied to it, find the background colour property, head to the expression builder, and then just copy the entire thing to the clipboard. I can then cancel from that, and I can find the font colour property. But I want to do this for all the cells that I want to format. So I'm going to highlight the top two cells, the title and Oscar wins, and then hold down Control and select the genre group header as well. I can then go to the font color property, click on the drop down arrow and choose expression, and then replace whatever's in there already with the thing I've just copied. So when the background color is this sort of dark orange or tomato color, I want the font color to be black, so I can replace tomato with black. And then when the background color is dark blue, I can replace the font color with white. I can then click OK. I'll just make sure that the group header is in bold as well. And then when I run the report again, now I've got alternating background colours and font colours for the different groups in the table. Finally, let's create a different set of alternating detail row colours according to which group the detail rows are in. To do that, I'm going to head back to the design view, and I'm going to copy part of the expression for the group colours. So I can select any cell that forms part of the group. I'm going to select the group header cell, and then from the background colour property, I'll head into the expression builder, and then I'm just going to copy this first part, so the first two lines, the if function and the running value of the CountDistinct. So I'll copy that and then cancel from that dialog box. And then I'm going to highlight the two cells in the detail section. So I'm going to highlight the title and the Oscar wins, and then I'm going to head to the background colour property, click on the drop down arrow and choose expression. So the if function that's currently sitting in there, I'm just going to move down to the next row, and then I'm going to indent that by typing in a few spaces at the beginning. And then I'm going to paste in what I've just copied. I'll need to make sure I don't include the extra equals sign. So I'll get rid of the existing equals sign and then paste in what I've just copied from the previous expression. So we've got a nested if function now. If I'm looking at an even numbered group row, so that would be one of the dark orange rows, then I want to test if the row number of the detail is equal to an odd number or an even number. So I'm testing if the row number of nothing mod 2 equals 0. So that would be an even numbered row. Rather than using a light grey colour, what I'd like to do is remove that and replace it with a lighter version of the dark orange colour. I'm not sure there's a really appropriate one to pick here. So I'm going to go to the more colours section, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit and find sort of a pale orangish colour. Let's go with Peach Puff, seems okay. Let's go with Peach Puff and then click OK. I'm then going to type in a comma at the end of that line, so that will deal with the detail rows in the even numbered groups. What I'd then like to do is make a copy of that if function, paste it in on the next line down. So I'll need to give myself a new line first and give myself a few spaces, paste in the expression, and then I can replace the Peach Puff colour with some kind of light blue. I think I'll pick one of the existing ones here, light steel blue will do. And I'll just need to close an extra set of round brackets at the end of that to deal with the outer if function. So it's not a particularly complicated technique. It's not a particularly elegant or nice technique either. A couple of nested if functions inside an outer if function. If I click OK and then run the report, we'll see the result of that is a fairly hideous looking report, I have to admit. I'm sure you'll be able to pick far nicer colour combinations than I have. But the important thing is that the detail rows are changing their alternating colours based on the group to which they belong.